Welcome to the archives section with the 100th Monkey Radio, and we have Mel Fabregas continuing on from the first hour. We were talking about Dr. Filipoff, right?
That's right.
Yes. What's his first name?
Let's see.
Wait, I have it here. No, I don't. Oh, Lachesar Filipoff. Dr.
Lachesar Filipoff, you're right.
Lachesar
Filipoff, Deputy Director of the Space Research Institute of the Bulgarian Academy of Science.
Is that the same name as maybe the Bulgarian version of Lazaro? Or
That
Lazarus
sounds like
in
it.
English?
That sounds like it. Lazaro. Or Lazarus.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was telling you about I was very intrigued by this professor. And at the time, I had met this gentleman, a young man, at one of Dr. Stephen Greer's conferences. It was actually here in Arizona in 2009. And I didn't know this until later. He had a PhD. He was a professor, an American professor in Vietnam. And I remember now that he had contacted me when I spoke with Sergeant Clifford Stone, because Clifford Stone knows a lot about Vietnam. And he was giving me directions on how to get to the pyramids in Vietnam. So that's why he was calling me. Anyway, we kept in touch. We met at the conference. And when he heard about the Bulgarian professor, he got in touch with me and he said, Mel, would you like me to get in touch with them? And he did. I had a few emails that came from him and corresponding with Dr. Filipoff. After that, not even 2 days later, I stopped hearing from Brian. I forgot his last name. And ever since, I lost contact with him. We don't know what happened to Dr. Filipoff, and I lost contact immediately after with Brian. That's my story. I've never shared that before, but here you have it.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of mystery around that whole setup over there that Ramon and I heard about the alien interview or conference or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm so bad with names. Kevin Smith.
Yep.
Kevin Smith has like a 4-part video on YouTube, which is, if you type in Mystery of Filipoff or just go to our archive, our video link page, and you go under UFOs and stuff, and you'll see the interview that he spoke about it, because he also was trying to get in contact with Dr. Filipoff, and he was breaking down their version of the Secret Service, of the Bulgarian Secret Service.
Oh, they're very powerful.
Yeah.
So
during the break, I happened to pop over to the Signet site. We are recording this on August 17th, which is the day of quite a significant alignment in our solar system. We have Mercury, Venus, the Sun, and the Earth, which all have come into a direct alignment. And I'm looking at the Signet satellite data. It's their streaming satellite. And right at the moment where Mercury crosses that alignment point, the sun shot off one hell of a burst. And I'm watching this thing and I'm going, oh, wow, okay, so these alignments have a definite effect of magnetic poles or gravity or some unknown or unnamed force has one hell of an influence on what is happening on our sun.
And yes, and usually you don't see what happens until 24 hours, 40 hours later, 72 hours after the solar flare. So we may, if it's indeed that powerful, we may see something here. We've also heard in my newswire, I believe it was yesterday, that NASA had a closed-door meeting, and they did not allow the media. And I wonder if there's any correlation between this and that meeting.
Who knows?
Coincidence?
I'd sure like to have a
fly in a room?
an insider from from NASA, somebody that.
And maybe we can look at any of those who are losing their jobs, because the majority will be losing their jobs because NASA it's just being obliterated.
You know, that's a distinct possibility that some of those people that are getting cut loose.
That's right. Let's say it on the air. If anybody who's listening is a NASA employee and you're unfortunately on the way out, I hope the best for you and your family. But if you love to come and talk to us anonymously or overtly or covertly, hey, feel free to do so.
Absolutely. You can find Mel's email address and our email address on our respective sites.
You know why I say that, Tom? Because NASA is supposedly there because of taxpayers. And if NASA is in charge of space exploration, I think we have the right to know. And I'm so tired of listening to people from NASA sometimes saying we can't say this or that because of national security. And we all know that NASA's charter states that they are a branch of the Department of Defense.
Right.
So come on, guys, spill the beans.
Right.
As Bob Dean said once on the show here.
Bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
With everything that's going on in NASA, and recently on Dr. Brooke Agnew show, I don't know if you guys got to listen to that last week. They have a ship that they spoke about, and it goes Mach 22. That's around what's that, 3,000 miles per hour?
You're talking about the Aurora?
No. This is the one that two of them got lost in the Pacific Ocean. And this is a private contractor, and now they're going after the builders because they found some conflict of interest there. But we're talking about, I forgot how many, I believe it was $130 million per craft or something along those lines.
Yeah, but I mean, the Air Force came out and spoke about it, and after it hit Mach 22, it went, actually it was Kevin Smith and Dr. Brooks, and they were talking about this, and how after it hit Mach 22, they lost trajectory. And what they were believing is that it didn't lose trajectory, it just went so fast.
You mean telemetry?
They said trajectory.
The trajectory.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. When you hear this, I mean, we're talking about Mach what, 20 some, right? We're talking about, what is it, 13,000 miles per hour. You can make it from New York to Sydney in less than an hour. Imagine if that were, and once again, I love to jump around. Let me just refer back to Dr. Paul Laviolette if I can. During my interview with him, we discussed how he approached the major United States airlines and had a plan with in a very simple way to electrify the wings, and it would save 70% in fuel consumption. You remember back in 2008 or 2009 when the price of gas, a gallon was $4 a gallon, $5, almost $5 a gallon.
Right.
Well, imagine what that does to the airline industry, which has a very low profit margin. If you can save 70% of gas and make the planes go even faster. Well, the response he got from the airlines was, sorry, but we don't need it. Come on, give me a break. And then you hear that two craft that were lost, millions of dollars, 13,000 miles per hour. Imagine what that could do to world commerce. Which, if you can take a product from point A to point B so fast, that immediately would just fix the economy of the entire planet. But he also approached NASA and with the same concept to avoid another space shuttle catastrophe. And this is before the Columbia disaster, the latest one. And once again, NASA came back to him and said, thank you for your interest, but we're not interested. And then not even a few months later, we had the Columbia explode.
No, I've heard rumor that they are actually doing that on like the B-2.
Oh yes.
And the F-22, that they are the electrified wing.
Here's the weird thing.
Yes.
Here's the weird thing about that. Their speed is actually classified, and yet on this new one, they're able to tell you how fast it goes. So that's very weird. I have the name of this ship on my Facebook profile. Experimental aircraft goes. Actually, it doesn't say the name.
Well, when you think of the B-2 bomber, it's $2.2 billion each. That's more than its weight in gold.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yep. And how much does it cost to operate per day?
Exactly.
That's it's.
Yeah, you know, I'm so ready for this financial system to do its thing, play its last hand, and be done with, because that's not the way humanity wants to live. I don't want to live that, and nobody I know wants to live that.
I totally agree. I think the reason why this planet is the way it is because of the current financial system. And once again, don't call me a communist. I'm more of a capitalist. At the same time, the capital system that we have is not working, especially in the United States, in Europe, with the central banks, the fiat money. Unless we create something absolutely different, I don't see how sustainable this system will be. Because in the United States, if something goes wrong again, what are they going to do? They talk about quantitative easing, which is the synonym of going to a printer and printing more money, which is only going to kill the dollar, make things more expensive. And the United States was known for a very powerful middle class, but that's no longer the case. They don't want a powerful middle class, just like they don't want smart students. I mean, in the United States, I call the educational system the propaganda system. You go there and you're not allowed to think for yourself. You have to be part of the hive mind. And in Japan, there's a saying, if you're a nail that sticks out, the first thing that happens to you is you hammer it, right?
I hate that saying. Oh, my God. I despise that saying.
But it's true.
It is so true. But, the way I look at politics and the whole economic thing is just like, you get in your car and you ask for directions and they say, okay, make 4 lefts. You come back and you ask for directions again and you make 4 lefts again. Or this time you'll make 4 rights. And it's just, politics is that way. They make 4 lefts and they end up in the same place again.
But the thing is, if you came here, and I'm referring to the United States, but I'm sure those of you who listen in Europe know the same thing. Here, if you really explained to people how it is that our system works in our Federal Reserve. And I always tell the story. When I was a sophomore in college, I had an economy professor who was explaining how banks created money. And I just kept digging, and you know me by now. I dig and I dig, and I still ask questions, and I keep saying, I just don't understand. If I put $1, the bank is lending $10 based on my dollar. I just don't understand how that's possible. And then he kept going and going. And I said, but who lends the bank the money? And that's when he said the Federal Reserve. And that's when I started looking into the Federal Reserve. And I interviewed G. Edward Griffin about the creature of from Jekyll Island and how they passed the laws and they got together on a Christmas Eve without using their names. A bunch of the richest people in the United States. And that's what really keeps us the way we are. If you told the United States average citizen that there's a private company, now we don't know who the owners are. And let me tell you one thing. I just told you that I worked for a Fortune 500 company, and I was in charge of rating some of those companies. And sometimes I had to go and investigate government branches. Well, one day I was given Federal Reserve, I think it was Central Bank in Chicago. And I could not understand it because I said, I just don't get it. This is saying that it's not a government entity. And this is 1988. And my boss looked at it and said, yeah, that's right. I mean, the Federal Reserve, and we started talking and we found out that the Federal Reserve is not federal and has no reserves. So why do we have a company out there with a bunch of unknown people printing money? Actually, they don't print the money. The Bureau of Engraving does. They sell it to us. And then they basically create credit, and we pay them interest. Kennedy tried to print a few $1 billion by our own treasury. And I think that was one of the reasons, many other reasons. Cuba, Perhaps he really wanted to disclose the reality of extraterrestrials interacting with the human race, and that's one of them. But the financial system, if people really knew what was going on, now you hear Ron Paul. He's been saying that for a long time. And now you hear the newest candidates, Rick Perry, talking about it too. They're demonizing the Federal Reserve. And I also heard that the Federal Reserve may have a 99-year lease, which is coming to an end. When? In 2012.
Coincidence.
And every year they get paid with gold. That's why, many people talk about gold and what's the name of the place where we keep the gold?
Fort Knox.
Fort Knox. That we're missing some gold, and even in China,
that it's empty. Some people say it's completely empty.
Yes, and in China they're receiving gold bars that are gold plated, but they're actually tungsten.
Right.
And supposedly every year, for every year since the Federal Reserve got created, they've been paid, because we can't pay the debt. We all know that. So they've been getting paid in gold, 1 percentage point per year. So what's going to happen at the end of the 99th year? They fully get paid with all gold.
So what happens now when they have milked the whole world of all the real gold, the physical gold itself, and then they crash the system, and then they have the only precious metal left on the planet.
Exactly. They win, and once again we go back to the late 20s, where the Great Depression was totally engineered. They knew that it was going to happen. They shorted the system, and once everybody lost everything, they bought all those assets with pennies on the dollar, and then guess what? People had to buy them back slowly at a premium. That's exactly what happened with our financial system in 2008. We're not living in a recession, folks. We're living in a depression.
Yeah.
And the only reason why maybe to some it doesn't feel that way is because they keep printing money. And, whether you like it or not, the dollar has been around for quite some time. It's a currency that's respected around the world. When I say respected, you know what I mean. The euro is significantly new. So the other day, my biggest concern was if Standard & Poor's downgrades our rating, the first thing that's going to happen, the treasury yields will skyrocket, because all of a sudden it turns into a riskier endeavor to invest money with the U.S. government. But instead of that happening, the opposite was true. It started going down. And I realized that people saw the United States as a better investment than Europe. They thought, yes, it's AA rating, but they'll keep printing money and paying the bills. So I would rather put my money into U.S. dollar than euros. But you see how we're jumping around from UFOs to financials?
Yeah, it's okay. We like it. Yeah. So, if people will take a look back through our history, even just the 200 years or just even back 100 years, I only see a couple of different scenarios that keep getting played over and over and over and over and over again where it comes to the manipulation of the masses. I mean, what is it? Problem, reaction, solution.
The Hellenic dialectic, yes.
It's
Hegelian.
Right. It's oh God, the financial system they created to bolster the economy. They create a tragedy, or a war, or the war is the big one, which we've had more wars since the Federal Reserve came into effect than we had in the previous, 500 years or something like that. Just the same scenario getting played out over and over and over and over again. And what I'm seeing for our future is another one of the same scenarios. We're going to have another big false flag of something. Maybe it's that final card that Carol Rosin talks about. Something's going to come about to create that big drama within the world. I think there's going to be a little bit of difference this next time, though. I think there are too many people that have their eyes open and see this now.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I have a student, she's 60-something years old, and she's very close-minded. But her mother is 80-something years old, and her mother has been schooling her and teaching her about these topics, the aliens and the in Japan, it's very popular to go to power spots, like kind of like Iseri kind of places. And I find that very weird that somebody who lived through the World War II is actually teaching her daughter on all these topics, and she's coming into this now. It's not like she's always been into this. It's just recent.
This is why I love to talk about all these subjects, because this is the epitome of interconnectedness. We were just talking about UFOs. Now we're talking about war. Exactly what you were saying, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
After 1913, when the Fed was established, the first major thing that happened worldwide was World War I.
Yep.
We put everything to fight against each other, and guess what? We finance every party. What came after? Well, World War II. And we all know that we were financing the Nazis and we were financing everybody. And the same thing happened with Vietnam. The same thing happened with Korea. And as you said, imagine if we could unite the entire world in an economically depressed phase of the entire planet. And then you get the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund get involved and lend money to the entire world to prepare for war. And that's exactly what I see happening too.
Make everybody indentured slaves.
Right.
Yeah. Tom, I don't know if I believe. Did you tell Mel the story about your dream?
Which one? The future dream?
August 17th.
Oh no, I don't think I have.
I think you did, because I remember being next to you and Mel.
Oh, maybe at ECETI at the conference.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you recall that, Mel?
No, refresh my memory.
Okay,
Maybe
well,
I do.
I dream very rarely, and every dream that I do have, when I actually recall a dream, they're normally pretty. They knock my shoes off type thing. So I woke up, and this is in the dream. I woke up in a bed, and I was in a room that had a very metallic feel, and I got up and I was naked. I started looking around the room looking for something to put on. So I saw these cubbies on the wall. It kind of looked like it was just a flat wall, but it had these little pods that slid out. And I started going through those and found some women's clothes. I was like, no, I'm not going to wear those.
I remember the story now during dinner, but keep telling us.
Right.
Yes.
And so I found a drawer that had the men's clothes in it. I got dressed. And I was looking around the room, and I saw a computer monitor on a desk on the other side of the room. So I walked over there, and for some reason I wanted to know what day it was. And so I started looking around, and I could not figure out how to interface with this computer. All it was just it was a screen, and I didn't have any mouse or nothing that I could interface with. So I was just totally puzzled. I turned around, and there was a kind of an island in the center of the room, and on that island was another computer, and lo and behold, right in front of it was a mouse, and I was like, all right. So I took the mouse and I opened up the calendar, and it was August 17th. Wow, what a coincidence, Ramon.
Today.
Today. It was August 17th of 5175. And I wasn't shocked or anything in the dream, but I looked at that and okay, I registered it. I got up and I walked to the door, and the door slid out of my way, like kind of like the Star Trek doors in the Enterprise slid open, Mm-hmm. And I walked out into this big hallway, and it was probably the hallway. I was like at an intersection, and the hallways were a good 50 feet across, and there were I probably saw 50 to 100 people walking up and down these halls. And about half of them seemed to be in some form of a uniform, and it didn't feel military. And the other half were in just random civilian type clothes. And I saw that, and I woke up. And the impression I got after I got out of there that I was either underground or out in space, and it didn't feel like I was underground. But that was 5175. It's coincidence that it's August 17th, huh, Ramon?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And that's the main reason why when I sent you the email earlier today, Mel, I said, keep your eyes peeled, because I just have a feeling that, and you know, maybe I'm fantasizing or whatever, but I have a feeling that Tom was really there. I don't think it was a dream, and I explained really quickly, and I remember saying this to you guys at ESETI. Number one, he woke up naked, which kind of reminds me of Terminator.
Mm.
And a lot of guys, the people David Wilcock spoke to at the place in Montauk, they always say that they can only go through with natural stuff through these stargates or through these jump portals, I think
Right.
they're called.
Yep.
The same thing, Andrew Biswago would say the same thing. So that's one. Two, in your dreams, for those of you who dream a lot, you know you cannot read anything in your dreams. Why? Because when you dream, you're dreaming with your right brain. You read and analyze with your left brain.
That's
so he
true.
was able to read the computer. So those two things make me feel like either it was downloaded into his memory, somebody else's memory, or something. But there's something significant, whether negative or positive, with that date.
Well, I kind of see the coincidence of this happened to be August 17th, and that story did come up. Somebody listening to this, whoever you may know who you are, this whole story may have a very significant meaning to them in some form or fashion. That's what I just got, Ramon. So.
You know, I have to tell you what you just said, Ramon, about downloading. Sometimes people ask me, do you have any experience in broadcasting or journalism? I hadn't interviewed anybody in my entire life. I actually did not feel comfortable asking questions like this, and they just happen. And sometimes this may happen to you, but I listen to shows afterwards because when I'm engaged with a guest, my mind is operating in a different vibration, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I listen to some of the questions I'm asking impromptu, I say, wait a minute, how did I come up with that question? I don't even know about that subject. And it's almost as if I'm tapping into something that I'm not aware of. But when I started the show, I used to, every so often listen or watch science fiction, not that much. And some of the topics I used to think were science fiction, i.e. Stargates. All of a sudden, I don't think they're science fiction at all. Let me just tell you a quick story. A few weeks ago, on a Sunday evening, I got a phone call from a guest that I was having that week who was unable to participate. He was sick. And I said, sure, no problem. So I'm thinking in my mind, oh my, it takes time to find a good guest and replace. But I said, I'll deal with that in the morning. In the meantime, I'm going to turn on the TV and start watching Stargate Universe, which I've never watched. I've never watched any. I saw the movie in the 90s, but I've never watched the Stargate TV series. So I start watching the first and second episode, and I see the ship, an ancient ship, that's going towards the sun. And the occupants are thinking, oh, we're all going to die because it's going to the sun. Well, the ship was going to the sun to recharge. Not only did it recharge, it actually went through it as a Stargate. And the first thing that came to mind was, I wonder what William Henry would say about this. Anyway, I saw a few more episodes, went to bed. In the morning, as I'm writing my to-do list, I click on my email, and the first email that got there that morning said this. Hello, Mel. I would love to come on your show and talk about ancient Stargates. Sincerely, William Henry. Now, how do you explain that?
Exactly.
So I think that Stargates are a reality.
I think that also falls into the same thing as the concept of the 100th monkey. Or, David Wilcock.
Yeah,
David Wilcock called it something else that I think it was by 1930, they had something like 122 examples. For example, 6 people will go and patent the same thing all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in 1911, you had the Wright brothers invent a flight, but what's unknown was the same day or the day after, the day before, somebody in New Zealand also had their first flight. So back then, you didn't have internet where you know things instantaneous like we do now. It takes at least a week. What were you gonna say?
No, I'm just saying, like it's just like the monkeys. I believe it's the islands of Indonesia. One monkey discovered how to clean fruit, and all of a sudden, in other islands not connected to that island, the monkeys started doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think our consciousness functions on that level, and I think as soon as we hit that critical mass, I kind of see it as we're right on as a wave. And we're crawling up the backside of that wave with the amount of people who are becoming conscious and aware. And right now, I think where we're at right now is we are right up on the crest of that wave. And coming really soon, that wave is going to crash. And when that wave crashes, that consciousness hits the ground and goes whoosh. And it spreads out throughout all of humanity. And everybody comes to the awareness that, wow, we really are one. We are connected. On a fundamental level, we are a symbiotic being. And hurting the guy across the street is just like hurting myself.
Oneness.
That awareness, that knowing, if that knowing is the 100th monkey, which is, God, that is my deepest and dearest dream. If that is the conscious awareness of the unity of us all, is what happens with that critical mass, that takes care of all of our problems, Mel. Every single one of them.
But take it a step further. I don't know if you know this, but when I interviewed George Kavasilas a couple of weeks ago, he sent me some news. We hear of the word ascension, and many people think of that word as a new age word. I call it more evolvement or just growing up and learning. But anyway, he sent me this very interesting report where science finally proves that ascension is really happening. How? 2 Russian scientists, Nobel Science
the Russians.
Prize. Yes, Russians, exactly. Here we go again, right? Well, anyway, they proved that the sun, with its photons, is transmuting carbon-12 into carbon-7. See, we're made of carbon, and mostly carbon-12. When we die, everything goes back to the ground and carbon-12 returns to the planet. But this is transmuting into carbon-7, which is a crystal. And when you're a crystal, basically your whole DNA is changing. So this is scientific proof that what the sun is doing is really having an impact on DNA. I mean, if you go back to at least for me, before 2005, I was totally asleep at the wheel. And ever since the year 2000, all the way till now, I feel like my brain has changed. It's wired differently. I don't know if the DNA is changing, but DNA operates like miniature laser beams. It's just firing in and out. And it works with photons. So if the sun is doing that to us, maybe one of the reasons chemtrails exist, not only is it for geoengineering, but it could be, because many people say, oh, but they're doing this around the world. No, they're not. I've been watching chemtrails for years now, and I've been observing those planes in multiple countries. I was in Mexico a couple of years ago, sitting at the beach, and I look up and I see this lonely plane. I was sitting on the edge of where the town ends, and the airplane was coming in, turns on the sprayers, and boom, starts spraying. And it goes to the end of the town, and it turns off the sprayers. Then it comes back and does the same thing. So it really makes you wonder if they're spraying above populated areas so that the sun is blocked and the transmutation of your DNA is stopped so they can stop the awakening process. That's just a theory.
Jay Widener's right on board with that too.
Yes.
Yeah. When we interviewed him, that was his postulation on the purpose of the chemtrails. Their primary purposes.
Great mind.
Oh man, I love him.
Yeah. What some people also believe is that the for example, the star Betelgeuse, if that star goes supernova, that the radiation from that is what will be like, for example, the Russian scientist who did the laser experiment with the frog egg and the salamander egg, and he shines a laser through the frog embryo into the from the salamander into the frog, and when the frog was born, it completely transformed into salamander with no traces of being a frog. Some people believe that Betelgeuse would, if it does explode, it would do that to our DNA, completely transmute us. Not only us humans, but everything on species on this planet would be transmuted into a new species. So, do you think that we are evolving to Homo Illuminus, as some people believe, or something else from
Absolutely.
the evidence you gather?
Yeah, I used to think that those terms were totally New Age, but I don't anymore. I mean, we went from Homo sapiens to Homo sapiens sapiens, so what tells you that we're not ascending in that regard? But, you know, one thing I've heard lately, I did a segment for the History Channel last year, and while I was being taken to the set, I was talking to the people, and they told me, by the way, and this is somewhat related, but they said, hey, by the way, Mel, you're going to be talking about the Webbot. You need to dumb it down. And I said, excuse me? This is the History Channel. Isn't this the last bastion of intellect that we have left in the mainstream media? Like, yeah, but we need to dumb it down. Our most popular show is Pawn Stars. So take it from there. I said, okay. So I go to the set, and the director more or less started telling me, Mel, can you please, do you have the blue star anywhere in the Webbot? He really wanted, this is November, he really wanted me to push the blue star, and I didn't. But not even 2 weeks later is when Leonid Elenin, which, by the way, some people say that he doesn't even exist.
Right.
I've tried to track him down, and I can't. So this Leonid Elenin may be a fabrication of somebody. If you go back to the movie Deep Impact, the person who discovered Ellie, exactly, and the person who discovered it was Leo also. So Ellie means extinction level event, and some people are calling it the blue star, but what some people are concerned is what's coming behind it, the brown dwarf or the red dwarf. I had the chance to interview Zachariah Sitchin for the last time, and we discussed this in 1983, and I remember in high school I discussed it.
Mm-hmm.
The Washington Post was the only newspaper, I believe, that posted that NASA with the infrared telescope found this massive object. They even called it. We know it's a huge object. As big as Jupiter or even bigger, and they're so sure about it that the only thing left is to name it. So I asked Zachariah, why did the newspapers all of a sudden retracted it the next day, or NASA said we made a mistake, they forgot about it, it's out of people's psyche, and now all of a sudden we're seeing this brown dwarf or red dwarf coming. And I asked him, why isn't this information more public? And he said the question should be, what would the consequences be if the information became public?
Well, I mean, it would depend on what angle you're looking at it from. If you're looking at it from a Christian point of view, disastrous. If you're looking at it from a Hopi point of view, would be
inevitable.
very enlightening. Yeah.
Well, but you have to look at the past too. I mean, you look at the Sphinx, which many people say that it was not the face of the pharaoh. It was actually the face of a lion, the constellation Leo, and it was placed there for a reason. When, for example, the what's the name of that water reservoir that we have here in Utah and California? What's the name? Hoover Dam. When Hoover Dam was built, it was built in a way to match some stars, so that in the future they would know that the time when it was built. Well, the same thing with the Sphinx. It was placed there in case we could actually pinpoint to the constellation of Leo, and that's when the poles were shifted. The island of Yonaguni in I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Ramon, but the islands there, the underwater pyramids. So at one point there were areas of this world that are now underwater that were not. If the cycles repeat themselves, and if this object comes in an elliptical orbit, what happened before will happen again, as above, so below.
I mean, the way the Hopi look at it is the blue star, or the blue Kachina, is, what was it? It's the one to let us know that everything is beginning. So, and the red one is the cleanser.
Right.
It cleanses everything. So what does that mean? That's the question. Because you might say the Hopi prophecies are all BS, but then, there's just way too many. For me, there's too many coincidences.
We can't discount the Hopis or any of the. As a matter of fact, I take more what the Aborigines and the indigenous people of this world say with more respect than even some of our top scientists.
Yeah,
absolutely, because they are the ones who are in touch. I mean, during the Banda Aceh tsunami in 2004, a tribe of 400 people were the only ones who survived in the path of the tsunami. 48 hours before, they climbed a mountain. The only person who died in that tribe was a disabled person who could not make it. Everybody else survived. And doctors and scientists who were along the path, they had cell phones on cars, they all perished. But those people who are thought of as backwards, stupid, they don't know what they're talking about, they're not in touch with society, they were the ones who survived. So whenever we point the finger at an indigenous person and say those people are backwards, we need to rethink who the backwards are, because we are the ones who cannot react, and we have been domesticated. We don't have that sense that the people who are in touch with the planet have. They were probably watching animals, or they have a sense that told them to move. Why don't we have that?
Yeah, so a lot of things. One of the things that's being pushed real hard right now by a lot of the people out there who are quote unquote enlightened or actually in connection with the world and trying to spread the truth, the knowledge of our conscious connection with the universe. One of the big things they are pushing right now is trusting in your feelings and knowing that if you trust in your feelings, you are going to be exactly where you're supposed to be, exactly when you're supposed to be there. Now, when you were talking about that tribe during that tsunami, that just popped into my head. It's like, okay, they knew where they were supposed to be exactly when they were supposed to be there. So this lends credence to all this preaching, quote unquote preaching, that is being done by all the another quote unquote new age philosophers and speakers out there that are pushing this type of message. That, hey, there's something to this. If you do get in contact with yourself, if you get a connection with your inner self, you can start hearing that inner voice, start hearing that or having those feelings of connection. The synchronicities start happening, and then you will be exactly where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. Case in point, Ramon and I starting this show, when we started this show, it was 12 days from, I was looking for radio stuff and Ramon was doing the same thing on the other side of the planet. We finally get in contact with each other and find out we're both doing the same thing. 12 days later, we're airing our first show and have our first 7 weeks lined up. The universe, the world, life, God, whatever you want to call it, put that stuff together because we were listening to our inner selves and we were exactly where we needed to be when we needed to be there.
And who would have thought that two people across the world, one in Washington, another one in somewhere in Japan, could be talking to somebody in the middle of the desert, and people around the world can listen the moment you upload this interview. If we had thought about that 10 years ago, we would not have imagined that. However, there's a flip side to this coin. We love the technology, we love the computers, we love our gadgets, but in reality, it's a double-edged sword, just like a knife. It could be used to cut an apple or an apple pie, and it can also be used to kill. But we have all this technology now. What happens if tomorrow technology immediately ceases to exist because electricity or there's a electromagnetic pulse bomb that's detonated on top of the planet, and we all of a sudden lose all this? What can we change?
We changed the name of the show to the 100th Monkey Telepathic Show.
Or Smoke Signal Show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think if something like that has happened, that could explain why so many people right now are so impassioned about these subjects and about understanding what the hell is going on. Because the amount of people that
We're
are getting
being
into this
driven.
field, amount of people getting into this field and researching in these fields, the number has grown so fast, and
It's multiplying.
it's just floors me how many different people are actually asking questions now. So this compulsion that the society is having, let alone all the crap that's going out in the world that could be that is helping to trigger it, let alone all that, there's also another essence there that I sense that is prompting people to get the information now because you may not have access to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think to tell people, we are indeed living in the most difficult times, at least for me, the most difficult times, but at the same time, they're the most exciting times to be alive. So when people think, I just lost my job, look at some of the attributes that you have. What else can you offer? Think outside the box. Don't just wait for
What is it you really want to do?
Exactly. And
'Cause
sometimes it's a blessing in disguise.
I remember when I lost my job, 2000. It was right after the 2008 crap. Was 2008? Yeah, in 2008, I lost a very cushy job, and it was the most money I was ever making. It was so comfortable, and during that is when I started getting into the whole UFO thing, and I started really looking into this. So, that's what drove me to go to ECETI.
So this is new to you, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been into it as a kid and stuff because I believe my dad was either an abductee or had an experiencer. Because he's always been, and this is weird coming from a Baptist.
Yeah.
A hardcore Baptist, very judgmental, but when it came to aliens, he was all about it. Which is I find weird, but it was a blessing. One of the things I wanted to talk about is ever since I've experienced so many earthquakes, I can't even count now how many earthquakes I've experienced. In this 1 year alone, I've experienced more earthquakes in this 1 year than my entire lifetime, and probably several lifetimes. But anyway, what I've started to notice is that if there's going to be an earthquake in the middle of the night, 30 seconds to 1 minute before, I feel it in my body and I wake up. And then I wake up my wife and tell her there's going to be an earthquake. And, 30 seconds later, it comes. They're not always strong. They're sometimes like 2.0 or 3.0. But back to the sensitivity thing, the more you work with whatever area, some people it's their chest, some people it's their stomach. If you sit down and you think two opposite things, and Emilia Benz talks about this, very positive and very negative. So, for example, if you say to yourself, should I become a serial killer? What does that feel like? That's very disgusting. I mean, you have to dehumanize yourself. So you're going to feel these, for everybody's different. And then you go to the opposite. Should I help people? Should I be, more humanitarian, become a real person, help the old lady that fell down? What does that feel like? And you go on these two different feelings, and you use it with different things. Should I eat healthy? Should I smoke crack? What does that feel like? And you get to a point where when something's going to happen, you feel that feeling, and you already know what it feels like.
It's a self-kinesiology.
Yes.
Well, I think it's something that you probably have developed in the past few years, if not all along. But I remember having been brainwashed and programmed with all the social construct at school, at church, media. And if I wanted to question something, I felt guilty. And this may have happened to you growing up, but in school, I was the one who always raised my hand. Although
I
the
went
other
to
kids
Catholic
were
school too.
Yes, but most kids were afraid to raise their hands, and I was always one raising the hands because I wanted the answers. I have a very hard time with society explaining something to me in an abstract way. I need to feel it. I need to understand it. That's why I wasn't that great at math. And math came to me when I went to college. That's when I became a financial analyst. But I had the worst grades in math because the way I was taught, it was not the right way. And most kids today, they feel that they're stupid. They feel that they're worthless because the educational system doesn't teach them the right way. There are many other ways to teach people. And when you grow up like that and you stop to ask, they tell you to stop asking questions, then the blinders start being placed around you and you start believing what you're told. And it takes a 9/11, unfortunately. The only positive thing that I can see, and for those victims, please don't misunderstand me, the only positive thing I see was the fact that we are all now questioning what happened that day, and we're looking for answers. And once we start looking and we find one answer, more doors open up. And that's what continues us becoming more and more in touch with each other, connecting more dots, putting the jigsaw puzzle together, and it starting to make sense. And yes, we have more abilities than we are led to believe. All these gadgets that we have are unnecessary. I was talking to George Cavazos. In the past, maybe we don't even need cell phones. There are tribes in the Middle East that would go from one point of the desert to the other. And there were experiments being done by people like Dr. Cloud Swanson. He would go with the people, walking the deserts, and the person would stop for a moment to give a telepathic message to the person who was many, many miles away. And once they got there, he confirmed that what was given, that Dr. Swanson say, can you please say this to the other person? There no walkie-talkies, nothing. He got to the other side, and they received the message, which tells you that we are more capable than we are told.
Now, in your own personal life, have you experienced that?
Have I experienced that? If I have, I don't know it, but I can tell you that I've had dreams that have become reality later, as I explained to you. There's one dream I had a few years ago that I hope it doesn't become a reality. I've had a couple. One of them, I was in this field, and I saw the sky red, a lot of airplanes, a lot of bombs being deployed, fire, bullets flying around, and I saw Chinese army walking in front of me. And this was in the United States. That's one vision that I had. The other one, and this is one dream. Do we still have time?
Oh, we got plenty of time. We got all the time we need in the
archive.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
We can be on here for 20 days if you want.
My wife was pregnant. That's why we love recording. My wife was pregnant at the time, and in my dream, I was taking a business trip. I was on a plane, and all of a sudden, I hear the captain get on the PA and said, brace for impact. The plane that was actually going down. And as I'm putting my head down in my dream, it's one of those things that life flashes in front of you. My daughter's now going to have a father. It was hurting me just by thinking about that. So when we're ready to crash, all of a sudden, I raise my head, and the plane is on the tarmac or somewhere. It didn't crash, but I look around me. I was alone on the plane. There's nobody else. And I see that the door is open. So I start walking towards the door. And it was not an airport. It was in the middle of a field, so it had the stairs, or the manual, the stairs that you don't, they're not the automatic ones. So I get out of the plane, and I start running towards a hill. I see some lights at the hill, and I start running there. And the first thing I see are these Tibetan monks, with their burgundy and yellow robes. And I start telling him, I need a phone. I start telling him I need a phone, a telephone to call. And they said, okay. They start making, waving at me. Okay, follow us. So they start running with me, and they take me to what looks to be an elder. If you saw the movie 2012, you see that Tibetan elders looked like that. So I go there, and I start making, signs. I need to make a phone call. And I get my wallet out of my pocket. And I say, I want to pay for a telephone call. And then all of a sudden he speaks English. He says, sit down, calm down. Your wife has to be ready to receive your call. And that's when I realized I died. I was on the other side. That was one of the most vivid dreams I've ever had. And sometimes you get these visions. They may happen, they may not happen, or they may have a different meaning. That's why it's so important to know what the meaning of dreams are.
Right.
Yeah, I find them just as much as part of everyday a real part of life, very necessary part of life for myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of dreams, I had one in my dreams. Whenever I fly out and I try to go into space, I'm stopped. There's this barrier, and you know when you're flying in a plane and you can see the upper level clouds, what I like calling like ceiling clouds, and they're way above they're maybe like 60,000 feet. But so anyway, so I always hit that and I can't get out. So finally, one day, I'm able to get out. When I get out, I step back to look at the Earth, and I see 3 Earths. The first one is flat. The second one, normal, with the regular moon. The third one was the one that really struck me. It was the Earth, and next to the Earth, the same size or maybe a little bigger, was this purple or maroon-looking planet next to it. And, you know, it really shocked me just because of everything that's going on with, quote-unquote, the dwarf star, Nibiru. So is that really happening? Is it going to happen, or we'll just have to wait and see? But as a lot of ancient books talk about the 3 days of darkness, what would cause 3 days of darkness?
I keep hearing that all the time, and more than anything is this comet Elenin. This really has taken my curiosity to a new level because 2 things: it's changing direction and it's changing speed. If it's anything natural up there, it should not change direction unless there's a force and it's going around a planet and it changes course or speed because of that. But if it's in the middle of open space, nothing should be changing the course or speed of that object. And I don't know if any of you have seen the TV series The Event. Any of you have seen it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember the last episode when finally we saw what looks like a red planet?
That's what I'm talking about. It keeps coming up everywhere.
Yes, and they killed that show. They're saying that the ratings were low. I don't buy it.
That's BS.
It was a very popular show, and it's so revealing. You got disclosure almost in every episode.
Yep. You know, I said with the whole Elenin thing, there's still something that it just does not sit right with me because I have not, you know, I hear all these reports from people and some of them fairly credible, but I have not. I don't know. I'm an amateur astronomer. I have an 8-inch celestron telescope, so I look at the stars all the time, and you know, I know the capabilities of what somebody can have in their backyard and what people do have in their backyard. I have not seen anything credible on either of them, on Nibiru or Elenin either, that makes me go, okay, there's definitely something there. I've seen a couple of things that have a possibility, but when there's only one source, God, you know, it just something doesn't sit right there with me. I don't know.
Well,
you know,
then again, you have NASA opening their telescopes in South America and Chile and Argentina and the South Pole, and they're infrared ones. You won't see, if Nibiru exists and it is really a brown dwarf or a red dwarf, you won't be able to see it with the naked eye or with a telescope right now because it's too cold.
Right.
There's no energy coming out of it that you can see in the visual spectrum, infrared or ultraviolet. But you know, it makes you wonder why they have these telescopes and they spend I don't know how many billions of dollars repairing the Hubble telescope to retrofit it to be infrared. And if you go to Google, what is it? Google Space?
Google Sky. Yeah.
Google Sky. And then you see certain parts that are
blacked out.
Blacked out. And this is NASA who's responsible for that. You know, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there. With the advent of the internet, you're going to have a lot of stories. People have cameras all over the place, but then all it takes is one person to make a fake of something, and then immediately it discredits the information that's being presented. So it's all discernment.
Right. Well, you know, I don't really trust what NASA puts out there. You know, when NASA came out with their Elenin announcement, I just got that bad feeling like, oh no, 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 no. Okay, here comes the great hazing.
Yeah.
So I'm still definitely, I want to know, like you, Mel. I want to know. I don't want to believe. I want to know, and I haven't found anything yet that makes me know.
Here's an idea that me and Tom had, and actually, Ben said he can probably get us the numbers. Through Skype, there's the area code for Antarctica. I don't know if you know that.
No, I didn't.
No. If you look at your Skype, when you make a regular phone call, it shows all the area codes from the different countries.
Mm-hmm.
Antarctica is on there, and the numbers aren't as long as ours. I think there are maybe five numbers
Something
altogether.
like that, yeah.
So what we should do is call down to the station, say, hey, what are you guys checking out? See if we can get someone.
I would love to have a line to one of those telescopes down there. That would be so awesome. Somebody who wasn't afraid to talk.
I think if anybody's down there, they have an agreement and they have swore so secrecy and with their lives. I mean, a lot of the people
Sure.
in the government. I have a story. If we have a minute or two,
Absolutely.
but it's right there with you
Yeah.
in Japan. In Japan, someone there was this lady I know. She was born in the former Soviet Republic of Czechoslovakia. She was abducted by the Soviets because they identified her as a genius. She defected, and now she is in between Australia and Japan, and she has her own clinic. She's a very respected doctor and one of the few foreign-born citizens who's now a Japanese citizen. That's how respected she is there. But anyway, a few years ago, a U.S. intelligence member all of a sudden was diagnosed with cancer, terminal cancer, and they did everything they could with him. They put batteries in his organs, and they, in summary, sent them home to die. And he only had a few, I don't know, maybe weeks left to die. And because he had such a high security clearance, they monitored him all the time. He actually left the country. I suspect he probably went through Mexico. And then he went to Japan and converged with this doctor I know. In just, I don't know, a few weeks, few months, he was completely cancer-free. And of course, he can never return to the United States because first he left the country without any permission, and nobody wants to hear in the United States that cancer is curable, because every time you have somebody that has cancer, it's about $800,000 that goes into the pockets of the medical industry completely.
At least.
That's another example.
What's weird about that is I met a guy, and I'm not gonna say I know him. I met a guy who used to work for what I hear from the English was that he worked for some kind of like black ops in the U.S. and lives here now. It's so weird because I'm wondering, it's a small world. As big as it is, it's very tiny and things connect all the time. So I'm wondering if that is him, because he's the only one I know that was in the black ops world that lives here in Japan.
Maybe.
But is there any way to get in contact with the lady here? Do you know?
I know who she is. Let me contact her. I've tried to have her on my show, and she's a very private person. She does not want to come out. It's one of those people that is one of the smartest people you can know. And she knows that Western medicine is just a profit-making machine. And that's why, Chinese medicine is what it is. And I also interviewed Dr. Betty Martini here in the United States last year, and she was telling me the story that she developed breast cancer 25 years to the day when her mother died of breast cancer. And she went to the oncologist, and she was told, yeah, you have to go through radiation and chemo and all the good stuff, or bad stuff. And she decided, no way. I'm not going to go through this. She, with her network of people, she found these people who were growing certain combination of herbs. In essence, She tried those herbs the way they had the recipe. She was completely cured of breast cancer. She went back to the oncologist, and they cannot explain it. It's not remission. She's completely cancer-free, and this happened years ago.
Sounds like
Immediately,
Rick Simpson.
well, yeah, like
There's a lot of stories like
Yeah.
that.
Well, what happened then? The FDA found out because it became kind of public because she's a public person. They went after the people growing the herbs, and guess what? They burned the fields, and they made those herbs illegal to be grown in the United States. So whoever tells me that the medical industry is not the new drug pushers for the pharmaceutical, big pharma, I mean, we have two things. We have the oil industry, and that's why you never hear of, like you were mentioning at the beginning of the show, that new craft that can go 13,000 miles per hour, or anti-gravity. B-2 bomber has anti-gravitic, capabilities. We don't hear about this because the Department of Defense is the bulldog or the fighting dog for the oil industry, because they still can make money. I mean, why do we see planes that, we see the 747, 757, 767, but it's the same thing all over and over again. Why? Because they continue making money. In the future, go ahead.
Think about this. This is one thing we used to always say in our neighborhood. Was our neighborhoods where I grew up was riddled with drugs, especially like crack, cocaine, and heroin were very big. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that none of these things were invented in the street. None of it was invented in the street. It was all invented by pharmaceutical companies. And then I remember this is no secret, in the 1900s, there were so many kids addicted to heroin because it was in cough medicine, and they would give it, and the moms would give it to the kids because it would put them right out. They would go right to sleep.
Coca-Cola had cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, this is no secret. So, and we know who owns the majority of the heroin farms in Afghanistan. Like, let's be realistic about this. And the whole thing with the Mena Airport in
Arkansas.
Where is that? Arkansas. I mean, the biggest drug pushers, you can sit there and point fingers at these little guys trying to make a little money off of it, but we all know who the real.
Forget about them. When I moved to Tucson, this is 96 or 97. I went to a social gathering at a house in the foothills where you could overlook the entire city. And I had a glass of wine, and then this lady stands next to me, and she had a few drinks already, and she was very friendly and said to me, "Do you see the skyline? Do you see all those lights? You see how the economy is running? About 50% is all drug related." And I looked at her and I said, "How do you know that?" "I'm a former FBI agent." And she started telling me all these stories about how the drug world is completely controlled by the CIA, MI6, and all the intelligence apparatus around the world, because that's how they get their money. They keep the prices up and the monopoly going. That's how you will never see the legalization of drugs, which I'm totally pro to it, because that would make all the states be able to regulate it, tax it, and you're going to get rid of all those the crime that we see in our jails. We have so many prisoners in jail just because of possession.
How much money is made from that?
Billions and billions of dollars.
And like they keep saying, follow the money, follow the money.
War on drugs.
War for drugs, as I call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, unfortunately, I gotta head out to work. I just realized the time. But let's give Mel a few minutes and take your time. Anything you want to get out to the public out there? Any last messages? Anything you find extremely important?
Well, as I said before,
when is your book coming out?
No book.
What are you laughing for? I'm being serious. Where's that book?
Thank you. I've thought about it, and basically people can listen to me, and that's enough. But maybe in the future,
that's not enough.
But anyway,
I
first of all,
Tom the same way about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
well, maybe
Tom
in the future.
One of our listeners, which he listens to both of us, is a friend of mine that I grew up with. His name is Bayong. I always harass him too, like, "Where's that book at? Where's that book at?" Because, You know, certain people you sit down and talk to, and it's like, okay, you guys need to write.
You know, the thing is that I really don't like to talk about myself. So even when I come to I'm getting more comfortable these days. When I'm invited to a show, and I'm privileged to be invited, it's difficult to remove the interviewer hat to become the interviewee. Because when you talk about yourself and about your stories, it just makes me a little bit uncomfortable.
Mel,
It's like, you know,
Mel, I'm gonna say this on the air. That's BS because I see the smile you have on your face when you're talking about yourself, because you're not talking about yourself in an egotistical way.
right.
You're talking about yourself in a way to relating to other people. So what you're saying is complete bullshit because I see the smile and and for those of you who don't believe me, just look at the interview that we video on Mel, and he has a few out there on YouTube where people are interviewing him, and just look at the smile on his face. So don't give me that.
Well, I'm always smiling because a lot of people have told me that when I don't smile, I look like I'm upset, and it's just my face.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
just if you, first of all, I want to thank the two of you, Ramon and Tom, for a great show. You're doing a fantastic job, and you're interviewing great people. Not because I'm here today, but the people that you're interviewing. But keep doing it. And for the people who are listening, sometimes I talk about subjects that may come across as fear mongering. That's not my intent at all. I just want people to live in awareness, not in fear. And as I said earlier in this show, we live in difficult times. But at the same time, they're the most exciting times. Just if you have anybody out there that you don't talk to, a family member that you haven't talked to for a while, take the time. Put those differences behind you. We're coming into very different and enlightening times. And, when you are ready to leave this plane, you don't want to just leave and know that you could have spent those years back with the loved ones. So take the opportunity to say to people you love that you love them. And you don't think that they know it, but just say it. And support alternative media. Support 100th Monkey, support Veritas. We're not sponsored by any commercial enterprise. We're just doing this with a lot of passion and to spread the word around the world. So I want to thank the two of you for the opportunity to come on your show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I mean, here's an advice. If you find it, like there's a lot of different shows out there that are very good. And, subscribing to more than one show, get a little group together and have listening parties where you guys chip in your money together and you can subscribe more than one place.
That's so funny you say that, Ramon, because I have two groups. I haven't heard from them in a long time, but in Japan, they call it Veritas. They're English students from college, and they get together every Saturday, and they call it Veritas Appreciation Day. And they sit down and listen and talk.
You need to get me in contact with them.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for new networks here in the same fields. Some of the ones I found are very fishy, but there's a lot of good stuff out here. Yeah. Mel, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and please keep on doing the good work because it's because of people like you that we're doing what we do.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is, anybody out there who thinks like, I've always been thinking about it. Don't think about it. Just do it. You'll figure out just the way, Mel did and then the way we did. You'll figure out how to do the show. And if you sound like crap on your first show, that's fine.
We sound like a crap on our 40th show, so come on. Oh, jeez. We have so much. This is so much fun, and I'll tell you what. Talk about being on the fast track to conscious awareness. Having the opportunity to talk to people like Mel and all the different guests that we've had on, and I'm sure Mel knows exactly what I'm talking about. Having the opportunity to interact with all these people and ask the questions that we want to ask has been such a gift from the universe for both of us, and our eyes have been opened so much by doing this, and I love all you guys for listening. I absolutely love everybody out there from the bottom of my heart, and God, what else can I say about that?
Well, I want Mel to send me a box of plátanos.
I will try
But,
to do that in the desert, although it will be difficult.
So,
I bet you can get it there in Japan better than I can get it here in the desert.
yeah, actually, I can get it, but it's very expensive.
Yeah.
yeah.
But anyway,
Okay. Well,
Guys.
condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance, and we will talk to all you guys next week.
any last words, Mel, before we cut off?
Well, I was just thinking that a lot of people live in hate. Once again, remove that. Living in hate is like having a metal coal burning, touching your chest. The one who's getting burned is you. So love you all, and thanks again for the opportunity. Go to veritasshow.com and support the alternative.